Hello, welcome to the Phantasmagorium Show. Scott and I are here because we felt the need to provide you with content for this month because it occurred to me we have been running behind. And so, tonight we are going to review the entirety of the Equalizer trilogy of films starring Denzel Washington, all directed by Antoine Fuqua, which is pretty rare to get a same director coming back for all three installments of a series like this. In part based on the original, or inspired at least by the original 80s television series starring Edward Woodward, which has recently been rebooted with Queen Latifah in the last couple of years. I think we should start with Scott because you're actually familiar with the original iteration of this, and I'm not.
Well, it's such a fascinating television show, in my opinion, because Edward Woodward, hi, everybody. But Edward Woodward is famously from The Wicker Man. He was 45 years old in The Wicker Man, right? And so by the time we get to 1985, he's 10 years older. He's 55. And so he is an older man, in my opinion, a retired James Bond type character. He is a private investigator who posts, he is the equalizer in the classified ads as a private detective. But he does have a mysterious past in an MI6 sort of British thing going on, because, it's Edward Woodward. Robert Lansing shows up as like Control, which is the overarching MI6 clandestine organization that is in charge of Robert McCall, or at least who he retired from. It's sort of a cross between retired James Bond and The Prisoner, but he's trapped by his job, not by an island. It's an incredible thing. Because it was when I was in 1985, I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I was like, look at old people doing authoritative things. And I thought it was really great. My dad loved it because he was an old person who loved authoritative things. And we watched it and it was great. So flash forward to The Equalizer starring Denzel Washington and Chloe Grace Moretz. And I was, first off, that's not a retired James Bond. So I didn't really, it didn't jump on my affinity for the original property, I suppose. I saw the first half of it for the first time tonight. This is a great Denzel Washington movie, the first half of the first one. It's not The Equalizer.
Yeah, the one bit I remember from seeing one of the episodes of the Queen Latifah thing is that it also had what you were talking about, where the ads in the paper, where this person actually is, putting bids out to actually help people. And they only allude to that in this trilogy at the very end of the second film. And it's like, okay, so he is putting feelers out there because at no point is the word equalizer mentioned in any of these films, which seemed kind of odd. Like you said, this is Denzel Washington. They never specify in this trilogy exactly what he did for a living. You just know he's probably a government agent. He has connections, and he just likes to mind his own business, supposedly. But when he finds out that his friends or acquaintances are having problems in the neighborhood that he lives in, he goes out of his way to help them. And yeah, you could say that be like a Good Samaritan type, if you want to call it the Good Samaritan type, movie instead of. But you're right, it's not really The Equalizer. The idea, I suppose, being that you've hurt my friend, so I'm going to equalize the amount of hurt onto you, type of thing.
But they do, but from what I saw, it is a balance of that because he is sort of minding his own business and paying attention and helping.
Yeah,
there are things.
Yes, there are. It's just at no point is he really, in the first one especially, he's not putting out feelers for it. He's just he finds out from other people that something's going on, like other people gossiping, like when he's riding in a cab, let's say, and decides that, he's going to go help that person. And it all felt more like Good Samaritan stuff because he's not putting ads out in the paper like a PI or something like that, Like this one, it just starts because he befriends the Chloe Grace Moretz character in the diner, and he finds out that she's being controlled as being pimped out, and decides he wants.
Well, wait. Okay, hang on a second. before we get to that, I'd like to say hello to Jill. I don't know. That was the worst segue in the history of ever. Hello, Lemon. It's good to see you. Lemon also says hello to you, Catherine.
Hey.
And Hakeem. Hello.
Hey.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, indeed.
Goes on to say, this felt like Death Wish type of movie, but I did like the first and second one.
Okay.
Well, and do you think that this sort of series of films is Denzel Washington's Taken or Death Wish?
Yes, because much like those films, there's a lot of shortcomings in all three of them that make them all feel a bit mid to meh, kind of, even though there's certain moments are like really great and others which are kind of like, oh, okay. Such as, I'd say the first movie has the best villain with Martin Sokas. And
I thought it was Dougray Scott.
No, not in this one.
Okay.
So I think that Denzel and Martin, and then of course David Harbour is in the first one as well.
Yeah.
They, in the cinematography, I think elevates it what would otherwise be a very bland, somewhat mediocre '90s action movie. Because it doesn't. I'm just surprised that he's like Denzel's into this, because it doesn't feel like something that's rising to his talents, because it's Denzel and because they're trading on the Equalizer name that it has attention, but it's not really something that screams Denzel Washington revenge action movie type thing. I'm like, okay, so it is very all three of these movies do very much feel like him doing what Liam Neeson's been doing for the last 15 years or so,
Well, and again, because of my limited exposure, does this Robert McCall have like an elite forces background?
Presumably, they never say.
They never say.
No, that's something which I think really hinders the sequel. But in all three of them, it's like it's hinted that he's worked for the government. He's had his record expunged, so nobody really knows what he's done or why. But the thing which I noticed about the character, which is a bit odd, is that he can so effortlessly just take down huge criminal organizations. And I'm like, dude, if you're such a good person, you have such a problem with bullies like this, why not travel around the world and knock over every mobster or mafia guy around because of how easy it is, and call it square? Because it's like, I'm like, yeah, you can help your neighbors doing good things, but it's like, when you have a character who's basically so indestructible that and so omnipotent in a way that nothing really stops them, especially during the epilogue of the first movie, it just kind of feels very sort of like the Liam. I think some of the Liam Neeson characters, that they do a better job of making you feel like he might not win, or he gets knocked down a lot more. Like the only point in this trilogy where I feel that Denzel, it seems like he might not get out of it or something, where he feels actually legit scared, is in the opening scene of this third movie. Like the rest of the time, he's just super confident, quaint Denzel. And that's cool. We like that character, but it's just not as much range to it. It's like bad guys show up, so people are trouble. He's just going to give them a brief chance and then kill everybody. Rinse, dry, repeat. And the first film I felt was very repetitive, because it's like, okay, how many big bloodbaths are you going to be able to create before the cops find out, because they're inexplicably not finding out? And it just like gets one thing after another. And even though they did a good job at getting you to care about the Chloe Grace Moretz character and what happens to her, but you don't really know anybody else in the movie after she kind of gets beat up, and she kind of takes a back seat. And the rest of the time, it's just him and these bland, gangster characters for the most part. And it's like, okay, I'm watching plot unfold. And again, the Martin Sokas character elevates the villain role, brings some good tension there. And there's a great sort of showdown scene between the two of them in his restaurant hideout, where Robert McCall basically sits there and tells a fable about this little boy who is chewed up by the system and hated by everybody and always kicked out of foster homes and all of this. And he finally got taken in by a very kind family. When he misbehaved, he forgave him. If he cheated or blackmailed, he forgave him again. If he failed in school, he forgave him again. But then one night, somebody breaks into the house and kills the nice man and his wife, and leaves this kid orphaned. And Robert insists that it was actually this kid who he had taken in, the bad seed, who did it because he was afraid of disappointing him, because disappointing him again to the point of abandonment, you wouldn't be able to take it anymore. At which point, the Martin Sokas character is like, oh yeah, we all know this story, and of course he's clearly talking about him. And I'm like, okay, that was a really great scene, and really making you feel something there. But the rest of the time, it's like, okay, we're just spending a lot of our time killing random gangster, Russian gangster people, like you see. They're the go-to bad guys at primetime crime shows. And yes, there is a interesting subplot with the guy he's helping out who wants to become a security guard. He's helping train and everything like that. And yeah, he eventually gets the job, but it doesn't feel like there's a payoff when he has a chance to be the hero. They don't really give him any heroic moments. So it's like a sort of like a subplot arc that doesn't go anywhere. When the nice woman who works at the hardware store with Robert gets held up at gunpoint and her mother's wedding ring is stolen. It's like the guy who did that, the punk who did that, that's the guy you want to see Robert McCall go after. But of course they're not going to show it. She gets the ring back, of course, and we just assume the worst or the best, I should say. But the rest of the characters that he's primarily going after the main villain, it's like I just don't really care about it. It's like, again, it's the go-to bland Russian gangsters, and I busted your drug den, and cops confiscated all your money. Ooh, I blew up your oil tanker. Ooh, it's just
Well, you know what? And like, I do have to give some credit to the villain. The villain sort of elevated it because, like, he gets off of a plane and he shows up, and it's like, I'm the guy who tells you what to do. Fuck you.
Right.
And then David Harbour's in this movie, everybody. And he's thin. It's crazy. And and he's like, oh no. And he ends up, he switches sides from being local to helping the crazy powerful Russian guy. And it's an interesting turn. I like the machinations of the bad guys going on.
Oh yeah, the Martin Sokas said he does a great job playing that character and bossing him around. I just feel that, after the Chloe Grace Moretz character gets beat up in the beginning, there's nobody else that he's really terrorizing that I care about. It's just other gangsters. Like he's basically going around terrorizing his underlings for not being able to bring in Robert McCall. And it's like, okay,
well,
but
no one can find him. No one knows.
But the thing is that because his underlings are bad guys, I could care less if he kills them. And so it just like so he's really good in the role, but it's like eh. And so when we get to the climax, where of course he finds out that Robert works at the hardware store and he takes his friends and coworkers hostage.
Spoilers.
Like, yeah, spoilers plenty. It's been 9 years. You've had your time. It's just, again, I didn't really care much about it. And the security guard, who they seem to keep building up his arc of, Robert's constantly helping him, change his diet and work out, helping him get to this job. And he finally gets there. And it's like his first day on the job as a new security. He fails to stop the guy who came in and stole the lady's wedding ring. And now in the climax, you feel like maybe he's going to be able to be the hero. And the most he does is turn the lights back on when the power gets cut. It feels like, like he should have done. It's like Robert's been kind of mentoring this guy throughout the movie, and they just sort of, that storyline just kind of peters out, and it doesn't have a payoff. And again, it's just Robert being, as Mikey Lito pointed out, like Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger, but there's no real sense of jeopardy for the hero. There's no sense of effort either. He just walks in and it's done, Whereas I could recall from watching the Queen Latifah thing, while very different, obviously, is it's not just ultra violence. There's an effort to what she's doing to get it done. Like you can appreciate the fact that the hero is going out of their way to try and help people. Whereas here, it's like, yeah, he's going out of the way, but because it seems so effortless and he's so, indestructible, so to speak, it's just kind of like, eh. But again, the fact that it's Denzel Washington and Martin Sokas just elevates what's otherwise a very mid, kind of bland 90s action type script. And you're right, it really doesn't reflect the Equalizer concept as much. It's like you could have just called the movie The Good Samaritan,
Well, I think it really sort of, and I may be echoing what Hakeem says, is the problem with most of Denzel's movies. He's the same character, only in different situations. He's always going to the smartest, fastest. He's always going to be the smartest, fastest one in the room. But I really like how, like, and if I were to give a direct correlative to The Equalizer, like Man on Fire, I just recently rediscovered. Mm-hmm. And he's a broken man doing the same thing. But there's more of a backstory. You understand that he is good at what he does, but he's sort of seeking redemption. In this one, Denzel Washington makes me want to apply for a job at a hardware store. Like, the training must be incredible. But when you see Man on Fire, there's more character. There's more backstory. Like even in Inside Man, there's more backstory. It's just like accept it. It's the same thing as with, like, there was more backstory in Taken as to why Liam Neeson was kick-ass.
Yeah, and another thing is that I feel that the first movie does a good job at building up the rivalry between hero and villain, that the climax just felt very weak.
Sure.
It's like, again, it's the showdown in the hardware store, but it's like the showdown with the villain. This should be a fisticuffs, really awesome fight, and it's just not. And then they have the epilogue where he goes
It's a gunfight, right?
Yeah, kind of, yeah, and he uses various hardware tools and stuff, but eventually...
Does he blow up a fire extinguisher?
He puts a few... I think there were smaller fire extinguishers or mini ones inside a microwave and blows them up.
Oh, that sounds cool.
To trigger the sprinklers, so that way he could use the electronic or the more electric power tools and electrify people in the water and stuff like that. And it was, some of it was kind of neat, but when he finally
gets... Does he electrocute them to death?
Some of them do, at least at the end of the first one, because after the whole hardware showdown, which again...
I did see him stab a guy in the eye with a corkscrew, so yeah. Electrocution is kind of better.
He sneaks up behind one guy in the hardware store and just turns on, lightly sets the power drill and just turns it on behind his head, and takes him down.
He drills him in the mind?
Yes, but the thing is that the showdown with the main guy is not that interesting. And once it's over with, they have this epilogue where he goes after that guy's boss, Pushkin. He just shows up at the guy's mansion in Moscow, who's already inexplicably just, killed everybody to get in without showing it. And the guy's, Pushkin's getting out of the shower, and Robert is sitting in a chair on the other side of the bathroom, flipping the lights on and off to be deliberately disorienting, lets the guy put on his towel, and he offers to buy him out, and he's not scared or anything of him. But one time when he turns off the light, he sees that he's gone. And Pushkin's like, where'd he go? And he sees the sink is overflowing, so he goes to turn off the water, not realizing that it's spilled all over the floor, and he's left some wires down there, and so he gets electrified to death as he just walks on out and gets back.
I have seen that.
Yeah, but at the end, it's a thing which is so effortless. Like, if you're able to go and knock over a major Russian mafia guy like this, then what's your excuse for just not doing this all the time and traveling the world? Because apparently he has resources and money to do it, because not only does he have the apartment that he lives in Boston, he also has a house on, like, I'm not sure if it's Nantucket Island, it's an island like that, and he's able to travel around the world as he pleases. So it's like, I mean, so I just got to ask, like, what's your excuse for not being a superhero all the time, basically? Because that's basically what you are.
He wants a quiet life.
Yeah, he does. And then when he gets back to town, he sees that the Chloe character is out of the hospital. She's turned her life around, and yay, and, small town type victory. And, the movie's kind of over with. So the first one I felt was very...
So he wins.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that's why this was only like $15. This 4K steelbook is because the movie was very mid. But you see, they got the pictures of the weapons he uses, like the buck knife, the corkscrew, the mini sledge, and skulls, and of course his emphasis on watches and stuff. So that's the first one. The second one, he's not working at the hardware store anymore. We don't check in on.
I don't know anything about this. You have to tell me what happens in the second one.
So in the second one, he's not working at the hardware store anymore. We don't meet any of the people from the first movie, even though he's still living in the same neighborhood. Or he has a new apartment, but you could tell it's still in Boston somewhere. And in the movie, he's a Lyft driver this time. After they have a cold open where he's in some foreign country somewhere, and he
like an Uber guy.
Well, in Boston, he's the Lyft guy, Uber guy, but it starts with a cold open where he's overseas somewhere, and he's disguised as this religious guy, this priest or whatever, and he ambushes this dude on a train for apparently taking his ex-wife's son, the only thing she ever really loved, and taking him with him, not because he likes the son or wants to take care of him, just because he wanted to be a jerk. And he gives him a chance, and of course the guy turns it down, so, he killed everybody as usual, and he just goes back and drops the kid off at like CPS or FBI or wherever in Boston.
Sure.
And she's like so happy about it, and he frequents the store. What?
So they show Robert McCall in Europe dressed like incognito to be like a religious figure to rescue a child. Yes.
Yes.
And he does.
Yes, he does. And
Do they establish how he was involved in that, or do they just present it as, well, just another day of Robert McCall?
So basically, when he gets back and hands the kid off, because this originated from Boston where he's living, I guess the implication is that he found out about it and decided to help. Like, it's not firmly established.
He went to Europe and got a disguise? This is just a thing he on his own.
Exactly.
Whim.
And so when he gets back to Boston and returns the kid, he frequents the lady's store at a later time, and she doesn't know that he's the one who saved her kid, but the kid recognizes him and kind of waves and winks or whatever, and because he doesn't want credit for what he does. It's like, okay. And then he goes about being his job as a Lyft driver. And like I said, there's a kid that he's mentoring, a young kid, Miles, who he's trying to steer him away from gang life. And, oh, you're an artist and you have really, really great talent as artwork. He's like, oh, I don't have the money to go to college and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you need to be, typical, Saturday.
Robs a bank.
Yeah, typical Saturday afternoon special type thing. And there's a garden in the courtyard of the apartment complex, and somebody puts gang graffiti all over the mural on the wall, rips up the garden, and he decides to help.
Robert McCall's kryptonite, vandalism.
Yeah, he's helping clean it up, and the kid's like, why are you doing this? The super will do it. And he's like, well, he might. Sure, the super's supposed to do it, but he's not going to do it, so I'm going to do it, And so he's trying to mentor the kid and keep him out of this. And meanwhile, as a Lyft driver, he drives this guy around and finds out that one of his charges, like this old man he gave a ride to, is a Holocaust survivor who's been trying to track down his sister via this stolen painting that the Nazis took.
Wouldn't it be so different? It would be a much different movie if it was like, so anyway, Robert McCall meets up with this Jewish guy, and he's a Holocaust denier.
No, so he's with a Holocaust survivor, and
yes,
the guy's trying to track down his sister via this painting the Nazis stole, but his caseworker says to Robert that, oh, this guy doesn't have any evidence that he ever possessed the painting or whatever. But the office humors him, I guess, to get him through the day or whatever. And they bring that up in the beginning, and Robert and the old man have a couple nice conversations, and they do a good job of getting you to care about this storyline. And then they completely abandon it until the very end of the movie, when out of nowhere, the guy's caseworker brings the sister back to him, and they're reunited for the first time.
Paintings?
They don't mention the paintings again, but there's no explanation for how Robert figured this out either. I assume that because of his government connections, he made some calls, but they never show that. And it just feels kind of tacked on at the end, like in the script at some point, somebody realized, oh, we forgot about this storyline we were setting up, and let's come back to it, And then, like I said, the kid trying to help him out is kind of oh, yes. Oh, Ernesto, hello. Best part of the second movie is Melissa Leo's character versus the hitman. Everything else too. Right, I forgot to mention that. Melissa Leo and Bill Pullman are a husband and wife character who used to work with Robert, and they help get information that he needs from government agencies should he need it. And the main plot that they choose to go with in this movie is that these hitmen killed a man and his wife and son in Brussels. But we have no idea why. Or they're mercenaries. They did it for the money, but we have no idea who these people were, or why they were killed, or why it's important, rather, to the story. Only that Robert decides that because it's causing a problem for his friend, Melissa Leo, Bill Pullman characters who helped him out a bit in the first movie, that therefore I have to investigate.
Is Bill Pullman in the first movie?
He's there as the husband of Melissa Leo. He basically goes to her to get permission to go after the Russian mafia.
Are we still talking about the
Equalizer? Yes.
Okay. No, I didn't get to Bill Pullman or Melissa Leo.
Right. And so, I forgot to mention them in the first movie because they're only in one scene. And so
I missed that scene. I didn't get to it.
Yeah. So in the second one, Robert agrees to investigate this thing in Brussels. He finds out that whoever's responsible for it must find out that Robert's onto them. So he sends a hitman to kill him. And, of course, Robert outsmarts the hitman and kills him, and checks his phone and realizes that the number traces back to one of his own former colleagues, who is also a former colleague of the Melissa Leo, Bill Pullman characters. And Robert just very blandly goes to the guy's house with his family's there and confronts him about it. And he's like, well, the government just turned their back on us, so now we used to kill people with a name. They'd give us a name and we'd kill them, Robert. That's what we did for a living. But now there's a number next to that name. I get paid for it. He's a mercenary.
Who said that to Robert McCall?
The Pedro Pascal character, who was revealed to initially.
Pedro Pascal is in part 2?
He is initially introduced as an ally. He turns out to be the main villain of the film. And
oh my God, I have to see this movie. I have it on Blu-ray. I haven't seen it yet.
Right. So he basically decided that, oh, well, the government turned their backs on us and we were government assassins, Robert, you and I. But the only difference now is I get paid for it. And Robert's like, well, and he's like, and don't give me that good old goody two-shoe Boy Scout crap of innocent people shit. But Robert obviously is bothered by that, and he basically just tells him and his cronies straight up, I'm going to murder every single one of you, but because the guy's family is there, neither side is going to drop guns. And I admit the climax was really badass. The climax is on that island off Nantucket, like I mentioned.
Before you describe it,
I forgot to mention the reason he wants to kill him is because when Robert found out about the phone number and tipped off the Melissa Leo character, Pedro Pascal sends thugs there to kill her. And they do, and like Ernesto mentions.
Oh, they kill her?
Yeah, they break into her apartment while she's in Brussels investigating the triple murder, and they kill her. Bill Pullman wasn't there, so he lives, and because Robert has found out that his former colleague Pedro Pascal has done it, and he did it because he didn't want to be found out, and so Robert just decides he's going to kill them, and
he's going to kill Pedro Pascal and everyone that he's ever met.
And his cronies, yes. And the problem is that it kind of overlaps with the kid Miles, because Robert helps get him out of a situation with a gang that's trying to initiate him or whatever, and he tells the kid to hide out at his apartment. Problem is, the bad guys show up at the apartment to kill Robert. Robert's not there, and Robert calls Miles and tells him to hide in this panic room that he has that has a two-way mirror. And he's doing a good job of keeping quiet and all that, and Robert eventually has to call him to... They have this rather, admittedly pretty good tense scene where it seems like he's about to be caught. And Robert calls him and says, can you water the plants while I'm gone? Because I'm not going to be there for a while. And then because the plot demanded it, Pedro figures out from looking at this painting on the wall that, he's going back to his house on the, Nantucket or whatever, one of the islands there. And this is where the climax is really good because there's a hurricane coming through and the island's being evacuated. And Robert just tells the security guy, one of the guys, I guess with the Coast Guard or whoever was evacuating everybody, I need to go back to my house because I think I left the gas on. And they just let him go onto the island to do this. And the bad guys, meanwhile, just shoot their way out there. And you have a really awesome, well-choreographed, badass action sequence with this major hurricane going on. And Robert having to move around and stealthily through the hurricane and finding all these badass ways to kill these thugs. But again, it's like, because they don't give us any much details on what exactly Robert did for a living, obviously Robert doesn't view his time as an alleged government assassin as being just random and evil. And because we never found out who the people in Brussels were that got killed in the beginning, it's just, this guy's a mercenary now. And since the Melissa Leo character, she was in one scene, in two scenes in the first movie and a couple scenes here, I just didn't really care when they killed her, which I could tell the movie wants you to care, but it just didn't. So I just felt it was very empty. I didn't care about the Pedro Pascal. I was much more invested in the Miles kid storyline. And of course, the Miles got kidnapped by Pedro and stuffed in the trunk of this car that's parked on one of the streets during the hurricane. And Pedro's taken a sniper's position and is shooting towards the car, trying to taunt Robert to get out, or he's going to kill the kid by shooting into the trunk of the car. And eventually, they have admittedly a much more badass fight between Robert and the Pedro character, which is pretty cool. And then they just kind of conveniently cut back to the next day, and they wrap up the story with a Holocaust survivor and with the kid. But it's again,
what did they do with the Holocaust denier?
Survivor.
Oh no! But what did they do with the guy? No, what did they do with the guy who denied the Holocaust?
There is none.
Oh,
I never said that. You said that.
Then I'm stupid.
But so he's reunited with the sister. Robert convinces the kid to go back to school, and he does. And the problem is that none of this stuff, it's very, because the storyline with Miles was a bit shafted, and the Holocaust survivor story was shafted in favor of this very bland, again, because they don't tell us anything about his background or anything about this. It's like you said, just accept it. And it all pales in comparison to the one thing that he does in the second or third scene of the movie, which is really good, which is he's a Lyft driver, and he goes to this high rise, and these very wealthy, probably stockbroker frat boy types come out to the car and put this call girl in the back who's clearly been drugged and raped and beaten up and want him to take her back to her house. And so Robert lies and says he's going to do that, and instead he took her to the hospital, and he goes back to the apartment and the doorman tells him what apartment he's in, and he uses the ruse that the credit card was denied. So they let him in, and he says, "Oh, are you going to ask how the girl was?" And they're like, what? And he's like, "Isn't she at home?" And he's like, "No, I dropped her off at the hospital, and they're pumping her stomach right now." So it's clear that they basically wanted him to take her home so she would die of an overdose. And so Robert does what he does best. He beats the shit out of these guys. And the one who was the most...
murders.
No, he doesn't.
Really? Good for him.
He beats the shit out of them, leaves some of them alive, but very maimed. And he leaves the young, timid one alive. He does. And the young one, he leaves the kid alive, and he convinces him, you're going to call 911, and your parents' money isn't going to get you out of this. And he confiscates all their phones because he knows they filmed whatever they did, because they're just those types of assholes. But this short segment of the movie, which is barely 8 minutes right after the prologue, is more... I am more invested in that and rooting for him to get those than anything else that happens with the thing they spent the bulk of the time of the whole movie on, with the Pedro Pascal character. And because it's a problem, they just want you to accept it. And it's just, yeah, the action can be well choreographed, the kills can be gnarly. And again, like I said, I like the Holocaust survivor storyline. I like the thing that was going on with Miles, but they weren't the central focus. The focus was this one, the mercenary thing, and it was just so bland and flat. But I was much more interested in the idea of him now being a Lyft driver who's just helping out people who he finds out that are having problems and being a do-gooder. But when it gets to a point where every problem he solves is just with ultra violence, so it's like you're just watching the same thing over and over again. And
but he's really good at it.
Yeah, you can be good at it, but he's just watching the same thing over and over again.
And it's also Denzel Washington. Like, if I may interject for just one moment. Exactly. Like, and this is the thing. Okay, but this is the thing, and this is what happens when I am aware of the television show from the 80s, and I see the Denzel Washington movies, and I'm like, I know what you did. You got a really cool title, and you took the name, and you paid all the people that you needed to throw money at, and then you just made a movie, and it's episodic television that Denzel Washington helps people. There might as well be sad Hulk music.
Yeah, I don't know
scenes. But like the original, like I just keep looking at this and being like, so it's Denzel Washington as a superhero. If there's no background, if there's no, like, I understand he has a wife who may have died. Robert McCall could be a widow, I think.
Yes, they make that clear in the second one, but they never tell you why or what happened or anything like that.
Exactly. And so it's like it's all shrouded in mystery. This is Batman without a mask.
Yeah, and so like I said, maybe in the early drafts of the script for the first movie, it had more relevance to the television show they're basing it on, because it's not like that's a big fan base they're trying to draw in by calling this movie series The Equalizer, right? Because again, it says Denzel helping people, whatever, and so I thought Pedro Pascal was a much weaker villain than Martin Sokas. I thought that the story was very empty.
Did you ever get any Ralph Fiennes from Red Dragon vibes off of the first guy with like all the tattoos?
Not as much, because he was this, again, bland Russian gangster character, even though there wasn't much psychologically going on there other than that one scene.
I thought
he tells him
he unleashed. I thought he was good in the first one.
No, I thought he was good in the first one too, but there wasn't as much depth there that they got to dive into like there was with the Francis Dollarhide character that Ralph Fiennes played. So right. The second movie, again, so you have all these disjointed things and people he's trying to help, but it's like when all of the separate smaller things he's doing is more interesting and more engaging than the main bulk of the main plot of the movie, then that's a problem. Which is probably why this one was also very cheap that I got, because these were blind buys. This is Denzel Washington. I'm like, wow. A 4K Steelbook movie of Denzel Washington being a badass and saving people. I'm like, how could it be this cheap? And then I watch it, and this is another gimmick they have where he always tells people like, oh, you have so many seconds, and he times the stopwatch, and then he strikes,
Yeah.
So that was the second one, and I'm not going to spoil the third one because there were people in the chat saying they were looking forward to watching it. But I will say
I am. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing all three.
I will say that unlike the first one, which I felt was about 20 minutes too long, or the second one, which is a bit empty, the third one, I think, has the best balance. Like, they do a really good job of getting you to hate the villains and root for the heroes. And to care about the people that are being terrorized.
Hang on.
What?
I would like to just say, as I mentioned before, Man on Fire being one of my favorite Denzel Washington movies. Like, in terms of the action genre. That's with Dakota Fanning, yes?
Yeah.
And Dakota Fanning is also in Man on Fire 3. No, I mean The Equalizer Part 3. And so it's interesting to see that reuniting of those two actors, considering the sort of chemistry that they had on Man on Fire.
Okay, maybe.
All right. Well, it was emotionally resonant for Kat.
I didn't care because it's been a long time since I've seen Man on Fire. So
I just saw it a little bit ago.
Like I said, this movie did the best job of getting you to hate the villains, care about the heroes, or the people that they were being terrorized. It's like the mafia, terrorizing the seaside community in Italy because they want to build casinos and resorts there, and they basically want to run everybody out of town type of thing, and Robert's there. And you just have this running mystery throughout as to why Robert is there. But none of the characters in the town ever question it. They just accept that he's a guy who's helping them. He's a nice guy. People like him.
But that's what he's been doing for the last two movies.
Yeah,
he's just a nice guy who's there.
Well, there's a lot of scenes of him just sitting at that cafe, minding his own business type of stuff. The Dakota Fanning character eventually will have some connection to the previous two. I won't mention. She's but I didn't feel any type of big connection there. It's like, okay, they cast her in it, and that might be fun for people who saw Man on Fire, but it didn't really do anything for me. They also have the opening was really good though. I thought the opening was quite clever with how they're leading you to thinking that one thing's going on, and they flip it, and it's like, oh, this is what's going on. And that was also the only time in the trilogy where it seemed like he was actually afraid. Not at first, but towards the end of the cold open, he actually seems like legit scared, and they take him to a really dark place, which I'll blink spoilers when we get to it. But as far as the non-spoiler section goes, it felt like a movie which was...
We're there. No one's watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Held together a bit better. It's just that once you get to the end, it's like they do it feels like right when things are going from bad to worse, like you're getting to the point where I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to solve this problem. Kind of like you mentioned about Batman, he's not going to be able to save the city from Bane and Dark Knight. Right as we were getting to the point where too much of the mafia was getting involved, like, we are not going to do this. They go for what would realistically happen at that point, rather than what felt like narratively was like. Narratively, it felt like we were going to build up some more, like we were building to something. Instead, it kind of realistically ends, and the climax just comes about very abruptly. And while the climax is well staged and well done, it felt like it just kind of came there, like out of nowhere. It's like, oh, we're here already. Because there's not as much action scenes in this one as the others. A lot of it is Robert like bonding with these people, which is very good. Because you actually, it's giving a reason for you to care a lot. And they did a very great job at getting you to really...
Well, isn't he trying to get out of his violent life?
Sort of, not really. Okay. You will find out. I'll get to the spoiler section now, I guess. So yes. For anybody who doesn't want spoilers...
Spoilers, everyone.
So
hang on. Wait. We should play something. Hang on. I'm going to play...
All right, you can play something.
All right, everybody. Spoilers.
So spoilers.
Now you are all in the loop.
So, spoilers are, the film begins with it's like a grandfather and his grandson driving home to this Italian villa in Palermo, Sicily. And they're suddenly surrounded a bit by these guys with like other, mafia guys with guns. And they stage it, and the tone and the music feels like they are going to be like killed or something. It's like, oh shit. And they're taking the old man through the basement. But once they get to the basement, we realize that he is actually like the Don, the leader here. And Robert McCall is...
Au revoir, Ernesto.
Tied up in the basement, and like that scene they've been showing from the trailer a million times. And he gets out of it as he does, and as he's leaving, he sees the kid sitting in the car. The kid's like maybe 9 or 10 years old, and he tells the kid to stay there. And he's walking away, and all of a sudden these gunshots go off, and he gets hit in the back, and he's shooting all around trying to figure out what's going on. And it turns out that he got shot by the kid who got a rifle out of the car. And Robert turns and points the gun at him, but he doesn't shoot. He collapses to the ground, and he seems kind of perturbed a bit, also because he's been shot. And he puts the gun to his head and he pulls the trigger, but he's out of bullets.
Oh no! Attempted suicide in the third Equalizer?
In the beginning of the movie, I think it's because he
Holy crap! That's intense.
The fact that he turned the gun around he was already pointing the gun at the kid when he told him to stay in the car. But once he gets shot in the back and he realizes this kid and spins around, I think he was probably, scared enough that, wow, I almost brought myself to doing this, that it bugged him, and he was pretty injured, and he tried to shoot himself, and he failed.
That's a crazy character moment.
Yeah, and it is, and it's a really great character moment because it feels like they're actually going to have more character growth with him. So a little
Do
while
they?
later, he is not really because he's
Okay.
parked. A little while later, this
I
guy.
just wanted to know if I should get excited, but
A
apparently not.
little while later, this guy finds that he's parked his car on the side of the road because he's been losing blood. He takes him to this doctor at the seaside village, who extracts the bullet. He saves him, but he tells his assistant, "This guy fell." He said, "But he got shot. He fell." I'm like, okay, and he wants to know, and he asks Robert once he's finally recuperating at the guy's house, like, are you a good guy or are you a bad guy? And he's like, "Did you look at my bag?" He's like, "No, I didn't look in your bag, but we brought it here for you." And so Robert tells him he doesn't really need to worry. So he starts doing, good deeds for the guy, going, shopping. He's living in the town, and he finds out from the other locals that this doctor has helped out a lot of people in this town, and it's like a nice little community of people who have been given second chances. But they're being occasionally terrorized by these mafia guys who are, again, trying to run everybody out because of, we're going to build resorts and casinos. And Robert,
any good character actors in the like henchmen or anything?
They're all Italian actors, and I don't know any of them.
All right.
The villain is okay. I didn't know who he was, but Robert does make a phone call to the Dakota Fanning character and drops her a line about the fact that this port in Sicily has been smuggling in drugs, which she doesn't understand because it's such a protected port in Sicily because of the Sicilian mafia. She's like, why wouldn't they take it in through Naples? And he's like, yeah, you should investigate this. She's like, who are you and why are you helping me? And he's like, oh, I'm just a concerned citizen. And so
I'm a hardware store clerk.
And she's specifically involved in the CIA's financial fraud division, tracking international fraudulent investments and to try and break up drug rings and things like that. So they go to the site go to the site of the massacre from the beginning of the movie, and they find out that this guy's been smuggling in a lot of amphetamines, and it might have connections to the mob on the Italian mainland, which we learn it does. And the reveal later on in the movie is that the Dakota Fanning character, who does track down Denzel, she does find out who he was, gives him a bit of a longer leash. We find out that she is the daughter of the Melissa Leo and Bill Pullman characters from the first two movies, and she's yes, and the money
all ties in.
It ties in, and
nice.
the money that the mafia is making off selling amphetamines has been used to commit these terrorist attacks in Rome. And everybody thinks it's like a terror cell, but Robert's like, no, I think it's the Carrera, like a rival mob family, is doing this. And the chief of police, who's on the take for the mafia, goes to the villain and he's like, look, these bombings, it could be a rival family, it could be terrorists, but look, they're killing our own people, and you're financing this by selling buying the amphetamine off of them. You should really stop doing that. But the villain doesn't give a shit about the other Italians getting killed, so he chops the hand off of the chief inspector, who we never see again after that, even though we're told he goes to the hospital.
As you do.
His thugs do really terrible things, like they go and terrorize this family in the seaside community and take the old man wheelchair bound and hang him off of the balcony. As you do. They lynch him off the balcony.
Like from the neck?
Yeah, and they assault.
Does he die?
Yes. They firebomb this guy's store, and
Does he die?
No, they don't. They're not home at the time, and it's like they're trying to just terrorize the community because they're trying to get him to sell out their properties and to get lost, kind of thing.
Well, that was a big part of the first one too.
Right, and so finally, when the villain has had enough of it and comes to town to kill everybody, and Robert comes out and gives himself up, but the doctor.
Why does he give himself up? Like, are they threatening people?
Because he knows he's figured out what the villain's ploy is. He's not here to massacre everybody to make a huge scene. He's just trying to scare them all off. So he voluntarily gives himself up, and then the doctor out of nowhere comes out with a shotgun and holds the guy gunpoint. And so the villain relents. He's like, I'll be back, and I'm going to kill everybody in this town, blah, blah, blah. And given that we're now realizing that the rival families are involved in these bombings and that it wasn't terrorists, it was a rival family faction, and that they're bringing in millions of dollars of amphetamines, it's like, okay, this problem is getting bigger and bigger. Whereas the Dakota Fanning character is trying to use her CIA and Interpol connections to try to shut this thing down. But then finally, Robert just does what you expect him to do. He just waltzes on up to the villain's compound.
He sets his watch.
He triggers a car alarm to lure the guy out to open the gate, kills him, goes inside, kills everybody in the mansion in a gnarly way, and the villain's asleep in his bed. And he's got like this stained glass fresco above the bed, and it starts dripping blood through on him. And he looks up, and all of a sudden, Robert just throws this guy's body down, who's been stabbed and sliced through the eye and cut up with a corkscrew, and
Well,
dangling
Robert
off his
stabbed
ankle.
and sliced the guy.
And so then we go into what is supposed to be like this tense scene of the villain in his pajamas going around with a gun, stalking, trying to find Robert throughout the house. And eventually, Robert attacks the guy, slices him a couple times, and basically shoves a bunch of amphetamines into his mouth and force feeds him amphetamines off camera. And he wakes up tied to like the bedpost on the ground. And Robert tells him he has killed by this, which is before he gets killed by his own drugs, basically. And Robert cuts him loose and watches him leave the mansion and stumble off into the street, get hit by a car. And
but
eventually,
Robert also did watch a man like bleed to death from the throat in the first movie, so he's comfortable with interrogating a person that he is aware of imminent death.
Yeah, he is. And eventually, the guy dies. The people in the town are happy, and we find out that the reason
how many people died to make the people in the town happy?
The Dakota Fanning character survives one of the explosions that had been targeted in Rome, and he goes to the hospital, and he finally reveals why he's here, and he drops a backpack, and he says, "You're going to take this back to Boston." She's like, "What is it?" And he says it's $316,400 of this guy Greg Dyer's pension. She's like, "Who's Greg Dyer?" It's like he's a guy, a bricklayer from Boston who lost his entire life savings due to a hack, keystroke, and Robert had tracked down the responsible party to that villa in Sicily, and that's what led him to pick a fight with the mafia. He just wanted to get the guy's pension fund back, and because he knew that killing the mafia guys in Sicily would have consequences, which is what led him to Naples, because he's been following the connections, because he has to now, feels obligated that since he picked this fight, he has to, make sure people come out okay, even though a lot of them didn't. And so she goes back to Boston, brings the money back to the guy as he's about boxing up his house to leave. They're like, "Oh, we don't have to move anymore, yay!" And the locals in the town that were saved are celebrating what I'm guessing is like some big sporting event victory, and Robert is there celebrating.
Do they sing the Yub song?
No, but Robert's there celebrating with them, and that's the end of the movie.
All right.
It's the shortest one at 1 hour 44 minutes. The first one was like 2:05.
Oh, nice.
2 hours. So I like the runtime. It's just that the story was so streamlined and well done, and did a good job again at feeling realistic and grounded up until it starts getting like a bit bigger, that I felt the story could have gone on a little longer, because when the climax happens, it is a bit abrupt, and it's like, oh, okay, we're already here, type of thing. Because for the most part, you're spending the movie watching one of the underlings terrorize the town rather than the boss. And so once he goes after the boss, it's like, okay, it's the boss, and he kills him. But I think it did, again, the best job of the three to get you to really hate the villains and really cheer for the hero, even though the villains weren't really charismatic. Again, they were just random, Italian actors, and they did a good job at getting you to care about the people in the town. And it made sense that he's, in a sense, protecting the whole town, because it's this entire seaside community being terrorized by the mafia, as opposed to the other movies where the different people he's helping aren't necessarily interrelated. But none of this is the only problem he's trying to solve. There's no independent character arc of other people in this community he's trying to help with their individual problems, like in the other films. It's just this one thing. So it feels a bit almost less than the previous ones. And so it's not until the very end of the movie. Yeah, so it's not until the very end of the movie when you find out this whole thing happened because he was trying to do a good deed for somebody from his neighborhood in Boston. And so it's not that he was trying to retire or find a quiet life. He was hanging around because he knew there was going to be fallout from taking out the mafia family. And the Dakota Fanning character asked him, "So you busted this major, mafia den," and she's listing off all the stuff that was in there, all the money, all the pension funds, all this extra stuff that he could have pocketed and made money off of, and he didn't do it. And he's like, "Well, that's not who I am. I'm not, I'm not corrupt. I'm not a bad guy," sort of thing. But again, it's Denzel Washington, so it adds gravitas to it. They've been billing it as a finale, but there's nothing narratively about it which makes it feel like it would be a finale.
I'm sure Denzel Washington wants, he wants money.
Yeah, and I heard that they thought, oh, we could do a prequel telling us about his origin story and use de-aging.
Why? You couldn't have Denzel Washington. You can't do it. This is the funny thing about this situation. And again, I'm sorry, I'm resetting the microphone. But I am curious about it because this isn't a story about a character. This is a story about Denzel Washington being kick-ass. Because if you're not going to reveal anything about the history of the character, then what do you have? A mystery about a vessel that is shaped like Denzel Washington. And at a certain point, and this is what I got to in the first half of the first movie, I was like, Denzel Washington is awesome. But like, even with Liam Neeson, even with oh my God, Charles Bronson, I get more out of any, like, this is just, there isn't even an attempt at explaining the mystery, not even hinting at the mystery. It's just
Right.
he's good at everything and he's a really nice guy, but he'll kill the people who fuck with the unappreciated. And it's like, that's the movie. That's what I'm watching.
I think there was probably more action scenes in this one of the bad guys just terrorizing the people than there was of him being the Equalizer, because for a big chunk of the movie he is recuperating from his injury. And again, that's why it felt a bit more grounded, because of the way the scenes unfold. And I guess, again, it would be realistic that at that point, once it's getting too big, he would just go to the guy's house and off him. But they never really explain the whole structure of the hierarchy with how this works. It's just a convenient thing where, oh, because he killed everybody at this mafia den in Sicily and now killed the mafia guys in Naples, and the Dakota Fanning character had enough information from that he gave her that everybody's been found out and blah, blah, blah. And the news reporter mentions that, and the bad guy died from the same amphetamines that he was peddling to killing the people of Italy. It's like, okay.
But like, don't you want to know how Robert McCall...
yeah, because it's like, we're 3 movies into this, and the only thing we know is that he's widowed. We don't know the circumstances. We know from the Pedro Pascal character in the second one that they were government assassins. Okay. But Robert obviously didn't feel any misgivings about it because he has a very strong moral compass. But the idea that somebody, I think it was Fuqua or whatever, mentioned an interest in doing, we'll do a prequel movie with de-aging technology, or we'll cast John David Washington, his real-life son, to play. It's like, no, both of those are terrible ideas. One, because de-aging is still not up to snuff and would be way too expensive to do that. Secondly, John David Washington's kind of like a one-note character. I think he was good in Ballers, but he plays that same character in everything that he does. I don't think he has his dad's charisma at all. Sorry. So I would rather do an Equalizer movie where they have an actual character arc for him, and that he's not just some cipher. Because it's just basically
character arc for him. I would like an Equalizer movie where they actually adapt the lore and situation of Robert McCall from the 1980s television show, which is what I brought up at the very beginning. And that's why I understand. I like these. They're great. Why? Great cast, excellent direction, good supporting cast, Denzel Washington. Is it the Equalizer? No. Because the Equalizer is about a retired James Bond who lives in New York, and he has he's good at solving crimes and putting the hurt on people, but he's not middle-aged. He's older than middle-aged, which Denzel is. You forget, because he's really good looking. But I'm just saying, like, there has to be that backstory and almost a prim and proper to it. Now, I'm not talking, what is that movie with Colin Firth where he goes apeshit over Freebird?
Over what?
Freebird. Not the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the
Kingsman?
Kingsman, yes.
I haven't seen those.
Oh, you haven't seen Kingsman?
No.
Oh, we got to watch Kingsman, at least the first one. The first one's great.
All right.
You'd like it. I recommend it, and I request it.
All right.
Thank you. But like, that's the kind of thing I want. It's like an out of place individual, not like a Richard Jensen from The Fugitive, like a Richard Kimball, David Jensen, Richard Kimball. Yeah,
it just kind of like Mikey Alito summed it up best. He's like a Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, but good. And there's nothing to that, and they never bothered. And because they never tell you anything about who he is or where he came from, and the only time they hint at anything Equalizer-like is when he puts the ads out, and he's responding to an ad online at the end of the second one to be recruited to help somebody. And it's like, okay, because when she asks him, Dakota Fanning asks at the end, how did you find out about this guy with the laws losing the pension fund? He's like, he was I picked him up as a Lyft driver. I picked him up as one of my fares. And at first I thought they were going to tie it back in, because in the second one, when he's being a Lyft driver, he picks up this guy, and they're doing this montage of him just driving people around, and one guy suddenly sees something on his phone, and he's starting to have like a bit of a semi breakdown and says, "Can you take me back to where you dropped me off, please?" with his voice trembling, and he does. And I thought, oh, is that the guy? Is that the same guy from who finding out he's lost his pension? Because she mentions that he told her that he found out from a Uber, but then it's not. It's somebody different. And it's like, oh, okay. So it just, again, if they kept it him doing what the Equalizer actually does, like they hinted at the beginning of the second one, where he's doing good deeds for people, and it doesn't have to be the same case for the whole movie. It could be like multiple cases zigzagging around, and instead it's just each one kind of focuses on him just being the Uber guy, and just there's nothing to it. And people made a big deal of the fact that this was the first character he's chose to appear in a sequel for, because he hasn't been in a sequel for any of his other characters he's ever played. But it's like hardly what I would call a sequel, because there's no real continuing. I guess the only continuing thread is really the Bill Pullman and Melissa Leo characters, because they're in the first one. Her death in the second one is a major plot point, and then the fact that her daughter is in the third one, because once he finally leaves her, he leaves her a note of he is somehow he gives her a little booklet at the end as well through the mail about all these other mafia guys' contacts or whatever, and he said with a post-it note on the front saying your mother would be proud of you, and that's when you see the photo on her desk of who they are. It's like, oh, okay. But yeah, it's just not, it's not the Equalizer. Everything's too effortless, too perfect. It's just,
May I posit something?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the television show The Rockford Files?
I'm familiar with the name, not the show.
James Garner starred as Jim Rockford. He was a private detective who lived in a trailer on the beach. His father was a truck driver, and he was a private investigator in Los Angeles. So he went and did stuff. He did private investigator things, saved people for a price. If you made just like a couple of tweaks to the Equalizer films, like story-wise, you could easily have Denzel Washington playing Jim Rockford in the Rockford Files, and all you'd have to do is change the titles. This is just lifting a name and then applying whatever you want to it.
Yeah, because
without regard.
I remember I only saw the first Taken film. I wasn't really a fan. I thought it was also very meh. I
only also saw the first Taken.
But I felt like there was still a level of effort that the Liam Neeson character is going to, despite that he has these skills, and they're trying to make it funny with I have a particular set. I don't know who you are. We'll find all that kind of stuff. But you can tell there's a considerable amount of effort and detective work that he's doing along the way to get to where he's going. In this one, there isn't. It's just like somebody shows up.
He just shows up like Batman.
He does, and he just kills people. That's all he really does. Or maims them.
That's all he does. And again, who said it? Mikey Lito?
Yeah, Mikey Lito.
Horrible, relentless force of nature called Robert McCall. He has no wits. He just shows up because they edit.
Is there any more comments?
No, I don't know. Check it out. I don't know. Where did I start last? No, I figure we would wrap this up in a tight hour. I don't think we have a whole.
Oh yeah, I know. I was just wondering if there were any more comments to highlight on screen.
Oh, Mike Alito says McCall knows all.
Yes. That's another thing. He just seems to know things.
Ernesto says, sidebar. Scott, why is your background in Portuguese? Is my background in Portuguese?
No, the background, the comics, the Spider-Man comics, if you look at the writing, it's written in Portuguese.
Oh, that was done by our producer at Stephen Foley, who is currently producing a graphic novel called The Orchard. There is a Kickstarter available, and if I were better at my job, I would have a link for it. But it is available, and I'm sure that there will be advertising for it. But yeah, no, Steve did that. Steve did our background, and I like Spider-Man.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't give these films ratings. First, says, that scene with the rapist feels like it was from a better.
It says The Therapists.
The Therapists. Therapist, yes, that's right. From a different, better script, because in the beginning of the second one, it's like, it's like, oh wow, this is something I could really get into, because you actually have a reason to care about what he's doing. Whereas the rest of the movie, it's like, like the first movie, oh god, they beat the shit out of Chloe Grace Moretz. Obviously, I care about that, but then she disappears for like the entire movie until the very end, and so the rest of it is just, why should I care about the villain killing his evil underlings? Great, good.
Well, but I kind of understood that because they were like, and I dipped out halfway through the villain's evil streak. But it was like, oh no, you're really building this up. So when Robert McCall has to kill him, I'm going to be impressed.
Yeah, like he mentions a line that, I usually don't kill blah blah blah, but I'm gonna make an exception for you. Come out of retirement to kill the Martin Sokas villain character. But now I'm more excited.
Says, well, and I hope that you're excited just based on the I think that when you made the comment, and I hate to be presumptuous, but it was when you said that there's a reconciliation or a reuniting of Denzel and Dakota Fanning, which I think is, I think that's a weird, because again, I'm going into this waiting for Denzel Washington to act. And Chloe Grace Moretz is really good in this. I have to see the second one because I bet Pedro Pascal and Denzel going off of each other is gold. And then you get Dakota Fanning and Denzel again. And there's a little bit, like, I got a little nostalgia going on with that pairing again. Old school Hollywood star chemistry. And yeah. So like I hope that, I don't want to shit on it. I'm looking forward to watching all these movies eventually.
Yeah, like I gave the first one, I think 3 out of 5. I gave the second one 2.5 out of 5, and the third one also 3 out of 5. Because the craftsmanship of the 3 and the technical side is good. Like the third one, the locations are great because it's Italy. And then again, like I said, the climax of the second one is my favorite action scene in the whole trilogy because it's just really awesome. So like, wow, who would have thought going through a hurricane like this is pretty inventive stuff to get away from the bad guys. But
quick question. Is this a trilogy or is this just the third in a series?
It's just the third in a series. Like I said, the only thing connecting it is the Melissa Leo character and then the fact that the Dakota Fanning character is revealed to be the daughter. So that's the only thing which shows is a sequence because they kill the Leo character in the second one, and she's in the first, and so you have to watch it in that order. And then they reference that in the third one. So,
two things.
But the fact that that he was living in Boston in the second one, and they don't reference any of the characters he helped in the first movie. Like, how are they all doing? Well, we don't know because the movie's not telling us, and he's living somewhere else than he was in the first movie, which made sense a bit.
He's a drifter, a loner.
Yeah. So, but it's like there didn't feel to be continuity with the other people he was friends with in the first one, and in the third one, because he's in Italy the whole time. Obviously, you don't get any real connection back to Boston. So when they say it's a trilogy, unless Denzel said he didn't want to do anymore, which I could understand if he didn't want to do it, because this seems like, Denzel wanted to try it once and then came back because maybe he needed grocery money or like.
Well, no, but I think it sounded like, as you mentioned right off the top, it's Anton Fuqua the entire time.
Yeah.
And Anton Fuqua directed Training Day?
Yeah. Yeah, so people
like,
are like,
anytime these guys can work together, if that's how they're doing their jam, do their jam. Like, it's not bad. It's not my ideal interpretation of the Equalizer, but whatever. It's still Denzel, and I don't know if anybody wants to see.
Well, they also did the Magnificent
Seven. Traditional, totes,
and that was, I thought, really good. And so, so that was pretty well done for them. I like Training Day. Training Day was probably better.
Probably.
I remember that one not being as attached. That'll be another story for another time. But this was, all 3 movies were okay, and they all have a lot of weaknesses and some strengths. But you're right, because I do want to, each time, I want to learn more about the Denzel, about the Robert McCall character, because you could do that stoic thing so much. Yeah, for sure. Yes, Ernesto, they should make the villain in the 4th be Ethan Hawke. Let Denzel go King Kong on his ass. Yes.
And Michaelito says, Denzel has said he does one for them and one for me. Did you ever see Denzel's Hamlet? The Cohen?
That was Macbeth.
My mistake. I can't read.
I did see it. The cinematography and the set design was great, but I thought it was kind of flat because it's a story we've seen a billion times before, and
Was it better than Mel Gibson's?
Was Mel Gibson in an adaptation of Macbeth?
No, that was Hamlet. Damn it.
I guess from an artistic standpoint, it was artsy and all that, but I thought I didn't really get engaged with it. Like it looked good, and you could tell the actors did a good job, but it's like Shakespearean. The problem with trying to do Shakespearean dialogue and taking it totally seriously as it was written is that it doesn't translate as well. It's like, yes, it could seem beautiful to read it, but listening to them all say it out loud and everything being not just the classic lines, but the really old English dialogue. So a lot of it you might not even pick up on, like, what exactly are they saying, and it's so over dramatized. They shot it in a way that it almost felt like they were doing a stage play, not in terms of the cinematography, but in just terms of the way they're saying the dialogue. What?
Blocking?
Yeah, the blocking in terms of the way the characters are enunciating everything. It feels like I'm watching a play, even though the cinematography and the sets show that's clearly not. Like they're moving the camera around a lot like a movie, but it feels very. I just thought that one was a bit flat. I gave that one 3 out of 5. I wasn't crazy about it. I do have a free trial of Apple TV Plus, so I might give it another shot. Ernesto says he still wants to see Schwarzenegger's Hamlet. I heard of that.
Oh no, it's in Last Action Hero.
Oh right.
So anyway, back to the Equalizer trilogy.
Yeah, we pretty much covered it. It's like.
So okay, so we're done.
Like I said, it's like all 3 movies have the same problems. Ones have their own strengths. Each has their own strength. Each has their own unique weaknesses. Or unique strengths, like the first one with the villain, and with the second one with the first good deeds that he's doing, and the climax being really cool. And then the third one actually getting you to give a damn about all the characters and the people he's trying to help, even though it's still more of the same. And the more you want to learn about, like, give us something more about him, Like, I'm guessing the death of his wife or whatever has something to do why he's so stoic and almost like a living statue. Like, you can't really read him. He's just going around doing good deeds, and I guess that's because maybe there's a piece of him missing, like a significant piece after he lost his wife. But again, they don't want to tell us anything about him. So it's just, it's like a cipher. We just have to accept it and roll with it. And so, yeah.
Recommend based on the charisma of Denzel Washington alone?
Yeah, but I wouldn't. Put it this way. I'm happy that I got to see it with my free Regal subscription rather than having to pay for it. And I'm glad
I got to borrow it from a person who owns it, as opposed to having to pay money for it.
I got those 2 steelbooks in a cheap bin, which I was really surprised by. But after watching it, I'm like, oh, maybe that's why, because they weren't that great.
If it's on cable, should you invest your time?
If there's limited commercials, yeah, why not?
And don't forget regular commercials, because you need time to make sandwiches. Go pee, make popcorn.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Though. I think the first one also I did was a bit long, like too long. It's like you can cut 20 minutes out of that, and the second one you can cut.
I was shocked. I was like an hour into it, and it was like, you have 1 hour and 20 minutes left, and I was like, fuck off.
Yeah, kind of like when I first saw Man.
You haven't told me anything about the main character yet. I don't expect you to. What are you drawing this out for? More torture?
Yeah, kind of like when I first saw Man on Fire. I remember it being a very long movie, like 2.5 hours, and like a different version of The Professional in a way. But I remember not being that crazy about it. But I do recall that they did a better job at getting you to care about things there than they do here. Or I mean, getting you to care about the.
Oh yeah.
You know him, like you know more.
People may have their problems with The Professional, but it's definitely better laid out in their characterizations.
This other thing I'll say, you could also get away with not telling you much about a character if they're charismatic enough. But I feel that virtually in every scene in all 3 movies, Denzel's doing that same stoic, like, you have 5 seconds, or you got it, or, oh, yeah, that kind of thing. That it's not as charismatic as, say, watching Liam Neeson, who feels like he's trying to put in different range with his characters that he's playing in all these ridiculous basically direct-to-video quality action films, or even in or on a sitcom. Like, for instance, or not even a sitcom, like the CSI show from a long time ago. William Peterson from Manhunter. He was
that television show called CSI.
Yeah, the one that the original one that William Peterson led.
Yes, CSI.
They don't tell you next to anything about his character or his personal life compared to all the other characters on the show. Nothing. But he's charismatic enough that you don't care and you can get away with it. Here with Robert McCall, the way Denzel plays him, it's like a blank slate. He's just here to kill and do that. And it's like I can that only goes so far. And it's like you either tell me more about him or give him some more range to work with as a character. I didn't feel
he doesn't present anything about his personal life or past in anything. Like, he doesn't wear distinctive clothes. He blends into everything. He has a generic job. His apartment is sparse. They make a point of showing that off in the opening credits of the fucking movie. And it's just like he is a blank slate. All we have is Denzel Washington. And I do not get a sense of character, except I'm supposed to believe that if I'm ever in a crime situation in Boston, I can call Denzel Washington and he'll be there.
Basically. That's the thing. Other than whomever it is that calls him at the very end of the second movie because he had the ad and online ad, then that's about it. Nobody else does that. It's just him sort of surreptitiously helping people when he hears about their problems through the grapevine, you know.
But even if he showed up, I would be just like, that's just a guy. If I see Robert McCall from the TV show, that's actually distinctive because he was sort of a prim and proper guy in New York. And then if I called Queen Latifah's Equalizer, I would be like, thank heavens she's here. But like with even Denzel, it's just like the charisma of Denzel Washington will serve you. That's it. It's just and I don't want to say anything bad because I can't. It's incredible to watch. But it's just like there's not enough there for me. I can't, good for you guys. I'm sure that I wish I knew the budgets and I wish I knew the profits. They seem to be working for people. They made 3 of them.
Yeah, they did. That's actually a good question. I have those numbers right here. Let me check actually real quick before we end it.
And Cinematic Universe Ultimate. Honestly, Burn Notice, the USA Network show with Bruce Campbell, I forget the name of the lead, is a better modern Equalizer. I agree with that 1,000%.
Does it say, did he just drop that now, or is that an older comment?
No, that was like now.
Okay, so he's still here. Okay, so yeah, so I'm just...
Why, is he your ride?
No, I remember he left earlier, so I was just making sure. So yeah, so the budget
suffered through.
The budget of this new one, Equalizer 3, was $70 million. And
really?
Given the rate of what the summer movies have been doing, I don't think it's going to do very well.
No, I can't imagine.
Equalizer 2 cost somewhere between $62 and $79 million production budget. It only made 190.4, and that's not counting in. And
that's this weekend.
No, 62 to 7. The Equalizer 2 made 62. What cost 62 to 79 million for production budget. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say what the marketing budget was, but in its global complete box office was $190.4 million, which means that it didn't
broke even-ish,
barely broke even. Whereas the original film cost 55 to 73 million, somewhere in that range. It's a big range. Also made 192.3 million. So, and these movies are barely breaking even in theaters. I'm guessing they're making a lot more money off them on rentals and purchases, hence why they kept making more of them. Because they're certainly not making enough money from those big budgets to be, justifying.
And do you know the budget of Equalizer 3?
Like I said, it's $70 million budget.
Well, everyone go out there. If you want more Equalizer.
It's projected to gross 28 to 30 million in its opening weekend, or a total of 33 to 40 over the 4-day Labor Day weekend. It currently has a 76% Rotten Tomatoes rating.
Nice. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with it. Yeah, I gave it 3 out of 5 simply because it felt like the ending came upon me rather abruptly. Whereas I felt that they could have spooled it out a little bit more, and therefore I think it could have been I think it could have stood to be a little longer because Equalizer 3 felt like it was streamlined enough, and I was invested enough in the characters and in the supporting characters, what was going on, that I felt that they could have added a few more twists to the plot rather than, oh, we're at the end all of a sudden, but so yeah, I liked it, but I would have given it a higher rating if maybe they told us more about Robert, or again added some more less predictable twist or something. There, you know what I mean.
I would have given them a better rating if it was good.
Maybe my 2.5 rating of the second one is a little low because again, I like the supporting characters. They're just not the main bad guy and the main plot point, but and again, because it does have the best action scene I think in the whole trilogy. So,
I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there any more chat in here?
I don't know. Is there any chat?
No, I'm looking. Ernesto says, even if this one performs less than the last two, Sony has their Netflix contract and digital sales. It'll be fine.
Yes.
And Mikey Lito says, I forgot. Netflix is the Sony streaming service. I forget that all the time. I get mixed up and tangled. And Cinematic Universe Ultimate, please everyone subscribe. Do you want more chat? Are you not entertained? Anyway, no, I want to go. Do you have anything, Kat, coming up that you want to talk about? You performing? Are you expounding anywhere? You're not talking about that there, Ahsoka. You're not doing anything with the galaxies.
I thought that Steve and I could have renewed our Star Wars show to talk about it, but he hasn't responded yet to my suggestion on that.
That's an offside note. You can't say that in public.
I also am waiting for certain people to get back to me for a potential Oppenheimer review, and still have the Across the Spider-Verse review. But I'm getting that Steelbook next week, so I'll probably just wait and watch that one again, so it's fresher in my head. We just did the 50th episode of the Unifying Force on the Virtual Cantina Network, which was us talking more about the business in general and the pros and cons and then good and bad, that kind of thing. And then, I did review the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka with RM on the Network, and we'll probably be reviewing the 3rd and 4th episode next Friday, perhaps. So you can catch me there. And I'm also I'm at Sly Snide at Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Letterboxd. That's right, X. But Letterboxd, especially for Sly Snide, you can find me there.
Probably the best resource for your opinions and knowledge.
Yes.
Are your movie reviews on Letterboxd?
Mm-hmm. I do need to write a lot more of those, by the way. I've been slacking a bit. I give a lot more ratings.
How many do you have now?
Reviews, probably like 15. Like I had like 300.
That's it? I thought you had more.
No, I'm
disappointed.
I had like 300 on MovieWeb back in the day, and they deleted all their user reviews, and
that was because of your slurs.
No, it was because they completely revamped the website and completely dumped all of the user interaction. So,
no, that's fun. That's interesting.
I
should get a Letterboxd. I always think about it, but then I realize I'm lazy.
You did. You and Bunny and Snipe and
did we all do it? Did we cave to peer pressure?
Letterboxd accounts,
and then we didn't do anything with it.
And you literally didn't do anything. You did it because I told you about it. You guys thought it was fun, and then you completely forgot about it the next day. And I'm still following you on there, but you're not. None of you guys have ever done anything on it.
Can you send me the link, so I can find my own profile?
I will do that. You can also find Cinematic Universe Ernesto on there as well. So that you can find us on there, as well as some of my friends from the internet. I believe Mikey Lito is on there too. I follow him actually on Letterboxd. So fun. That's fun.
Well, and if you'd like to find me for whatever reason, I am here, and I'm Scotty R37 on Letterboxd. Scotty R37 on X, and because I'm an X-Man. And I also play a lot of the time on Anti-Derivative Jill's channel, which is amazing. We do Star Trek, the original series reviews every Tuesday at around 1 o'clock Central Time. And then sometimes on Fridays and sometimes in the middle of the night when we decide to get baked and play video games. And then also Cinema Gulp. Everyone should subscribe to Cinema Gulp because they've been doing stuff that is way better than everyone that I just mentioned.
All
they
right.
edit. They got music and cues and clips.
Mm-hmm.
And both of us are on there too, right? So it's not like I'm being a dick. Too much. Anyway, anything else? Do you want to go? I was gonna close with like a song.
Sure, whatever you want to close with.
You done?
Yep.
Well, it was good to see you.
Yep.